The ghost investor Heiress Charles couldn't trace turned out to be his ex-wife, the one he'd left pregnant and penniless 5 years ago. Anna had quietly built a $40 million empire by acquiring every failed deal he'd abandoned, positioning herself as the shadow that outplayed him at every move, and now she was walking into his gala as the majority shareholder of Heiress Enterprises. But nobody was prepared for who she brought with her. He left her when she needed him most, but 5 years later, she returned with his twins and his crown. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends, to Mr. Crown Stories. If no one's reminded you today, hear this truth: you are enough. You are worthy. You are the spark of your own redemption. I craft these tales for hearts like yours, scarred yet unbroken, dreaming of a dawn after the darkest night. If this stirs your soul, click subscribe, whisper I am here, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'll bring you another story just as captivating, and you don't want to miss it. Every word I write is for you, the one who's faced betrayal and found the courage to rise. May your spirit be wrapped in hope, your struggles softened by grace, and your heart lit with the promise of tomorrow. Let's walk this path together, hand in hand, soul to soul. Now let us begin. Alone that night, Anna clutched her stomach, vowing to rise from the ashes of his betrayal. The penthouse, once a haven of shared dreams, now loomed large and empty, its vast windows framing the city's glittering skyline. Anna Jones stood at its heart, a pregnancy test trembling in her hand, its 2 pink lines a silent symphony of hope. At 29, she radiated a quiet joy, her dark hair cascading over the shoulders of a soft blue dress she'd chosen with care, its hue a mirror to the future she envisioned. Tonight was meant to be a celebration, a turning point in her whirlwind love story with Heiress Charles, the billionaire industrialist who'd swept her into his world. She'd spent hours preparing. The oak table gleamed with his favorite scotch, a 1988 Macallan, its amber glow catching the flicker of candles arranged in a delicate arc. A velvet box held a pair of tiny shoes, a tender surprise to unveil the twins growing within her. The air carried the scent of rosemary from the dinner she'd cooked, his mother's recipe, a nod to the family they'd build. Anna's heart raced with anticipation, her reflection in the glass showing a woman in love, radiant with the promise of new life. The clock ticked past 10 p.m., and doubt began to creep in. Charles was late, again. She smoothed her dress, whispering to herself, he'll be here. He'll see. Their marriage had been a fairy tale since that gala 4 years ago, where she, a humble event coordinator, had caught the eye of the man in the tailored suit, his smile a beacon of possibility. Private jets, whispered vows on a Tuscan hillside, a penthouse that became their shared canvas, each moment had built her trust in him. Tonight, she'd tell him about the twins, and their story would deepen into something eternal. The key turned in the lock, and her pulse quickened. Charles, love, she called, her voice a melody of excitement as she hid the test behind her back, eager to see joy light his face. But the man who stepped inside was a shadow of the husband she knew. Charles's broad frame filled the doorway, his navy suit pristine despite the late hour, yet his presence carried a chill. A faint perfume clung to him, floral, unfamiliar, mingling with the rain that glistened on his shoulders. His dark eyes, once warm with affection, now held a distance that froze her breath. Beside him stood Grace Arden, the heiress whose elegance masked a calculated edge, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, her black dress a stark contrast to Anna's softness. Anna's smile faltered, her hand tightening around the test. Charles? What's, she began, but his voice cut through, flat and unyielding. Anna, this is over. Grace is my future. You're in the way. The words landed like shards of ice, shattering the warmth she'd built. Grace's lips curved into a faint, triumphant smile, her hand resting lightly on Charles's arm as if claiming him. Anna's world tilted. She stepped forward, the test slipping from her numb fingers, clattering to the hardwood floor with a sound that echoed in the sudden silence. What are you saying?" she whispered, her voice breaking, but Charles didn't meet her gaze. He adjusted his cufflinks, those silver ones she'd given him for their anniversary, and stepped over the fallen test without a glance, as if it were debris in his path. Grace followed, her heels clicking a rhythm of victory, and the door closed behind them with a finality that stole Anna's breath. She sank to her knees, the cold floor pressing against her skin, tears spilling as she stared at the test. 2 pink lines, a promise now mocked by his absence. Her mind raced, his late nights, the excuses, the way his laughter had faded, but she'd clung to love, believing it could weather any storm. Now, the storm had broken her. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the faint flutter of life within, and a sob escaped her. "How could you?" she murmured, but the penthouse offered no answer, its grandeur now a hollow shell. The candles flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts of the life she'd lost. Minutes stretched into an eternity as she gathered herself, her tears slowing into a resolve she didn't yet recognize. She rose, clutching the velvet box, the tiny shoes a weight in her palm. The scotch sat untouched, a bitter irony, and she poured it into the sink, watching the amber liquid swirl away. Charles's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a theft of her future, her security. Whispers of Grace's father, a mogul whose investment could save Heiress Enterprises, echoed in her memory. He'd chosen power over her, over the children she carried. The realization hardened something within her, an ember of defiance sparking to life. Anna moved to the window, the city lights blurring through her tears, and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. "You won't even know what you've lost," she whispered, her voice steadying with each word. The twins, Ethan and Ella, names she'd chosen in secret, deserved more than a father who walked away. She placed a hand on her stomach again, a silent vow forming. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something she'd forge alone. The penthouse, once a symbol of their love, now stood as her battleground, its silence a canvas for her strength. Outside, the city hummed, oblivious to her pain, but within her, a plan began to take root. She'd heard rumors of Charles's financial strain, the deals slipping through his fingers, whispers she dismissed as gossip. Now, they fueled her. If he thought her weak, he'd learn otherwise. She wiped her eyes, the velvet box still in her hand, and turned from the window. The night stretched ahead, dark and uncertain, but Anna felt a flicker of purpose. She wouldn't beg or break. She'd build. As the clock struck midnight, the sound of a car engine faded into the distance. Charles, driving away with Grace, leaving Anna behind. She stood alone in the penthouse, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching the box, promising her unborn children, "We'll survive. We'll thrive." The door remained closed, but in that moment, Anna opened a new chapter, one where she would rise from the ashes of his choice. The city lights burned brighter outside, a silent witness to the woman who would not be erased. The dawn broke cold over the penthouse, its silence a heavy shroud after Charles's departure. Anna woke to an emptiness that gnawed at her, her hand still resting on her stomach where the twins stirred faintly. The betrayal lingered like a bitter taste, but with it came a flicker of resolve. She moved to the kitchen, intending to pour herself coffee, only to find her bank card declined at the automated machine. Confusion turned to dread as she logged into their joint account, empty. A message from Charles's lawyer blinked on her phone, all accounts frozen. All ties severed. Vacate the premises by week's end. The words hit like a physical blow. He'd stripped her of everything, her home, her security, her name erased from Heiress Enterprises as if she'd never existed. Tears stung her eyes, but she wiped them away, the twins' gentle kicks a reminder of what she still had. Forced to act, Anna packed her belongings into a single suitcase, the velvet box with the tiny shoes tucked inside. The penthouse, once a symbol of love, now felt like a prison she was glad to leave. Movers arrived, their efficiency a cold contrast to her turmoil, and within hours, she stood on the city's edge, keys to a cramped apartment in hand. The space was a far cry from the luxury she'd known, peeling paint, a sagging couch, and a view of a brick wall, but it was hers. She sank onto the couch, exhaustion weighing her down, yet the twins' movements offered a solace she clung to. "We'll make this work," she whispered to them, her voice trembling but determined. Days blurred into weeks, each one a struggle to survive. The tabloids became a cruel mirror, Grace's face plastered across headlines, Heiress Charles and Grace Arden, the power couple. Photos showed them at galas, her arm linked with his, their smiles a mockery of Anna's pain. The world celebrated their union, oblivious to the wife he discarded and the children she carried. Anna avoided the newsstands, her focus narrowing to the life within her. She took odd jobs, cashier shifts at a corner store, late-night sewing for a local tailor, her savings dwindling as she stretched every dollar. The heartbreak threatened to drown her, but each kick from the twins pulled her back, a lifeline in the storm. The labor came early, a sudden rush of pain that sent her alone to the hospital. No hand to hold, no voice to comfort, only the sterile walls and the beeping monitors. Ethan and Ella arrived prematurely, their tiny cries filling the room as Anna lay exhausted, her heart swelling with a love fiercer than her fear. The doctor, a kind woman with graying hair, approached with a gentle smile. "They're fighters, Just like you, she said, her words a balm to Anna's weary soul. The twins, fragile yet alive, were placed in her arms, their small faces a mirror of her own resilience. Tears fell, but this time they were of gratitude, a mother's love igniting her rebirth. The hospital room became her sanctuary, its window overlooking a gray sky that mirrored her rock bottom. Anna held Ethan and Ella close, their warmth a contrast to the cold world outside. She thought of Charles, his betrayal a distant echo, and felt no anger, only a quiet strength. The tabloids could crown Grace and Charles, but here in this moment, Anna held her own victory. She traced the twins' tiny fingers, naming them silently again, Ethan with his determined grip, Ella with her soft coos. They were hers, and she would build their world from the ashes of what she'd lost. Standing by the window, the city stretched out below, indifferent to her struggle. Anna's reflection showed a woman changed, worn, yes, but unbowed. The doctor's words echoed, fighters, like her. She pressed a hand to the glass, then to her heart, and whispered, you will never need him. I'll build our world myself. The vow hung in the air, a promise to the twins and to herself, a seed of a future she'd cultivate with her own hands. The hospital's hum faded as she turned back to her children, their breaths a rhythm of hope. Outside, the world moved on, but within Anna, a new story began. The small apartment awaited, a humble start, but she saw potential where others saw ruin. The tabloids would fade, Charles's shadow would dim, and Grace's reign would mean nothing against the empire Anna would raise. For now, she stood at rock bottom, but the ground beneath her felt solid, a foundation for what was to come. The small apartment hummed with the quiet rhythm of survival, its walls a testament to Anna's resilience. Months had passed since the twins' birth, and each day was a battle waged with love. By day, Anna balanced ledgers as a part-time bookkeeper, her nimble fingers dancing over numbers at a cramped desk in a downtown firm. By night, she donned a uniform and scrubbed office floors, the scent of bleach mingling with her exhaustion. Ethan and Ella, now toddling, filled the apartment with giggles, their tiny hands clutching her legs as she stumbled home. The jobs were grueling, but they paid the bills, and with each paycheck, Anna stashed a few dollars, a secret hoard for a future she couldn't yet name. One evening, as she polished a conference room table, voices drifted from the next room, executives from a rival firm, their laughter sharp with disdain. Heiress Enterprises is sinking, one said, swirling a glass of whiskey. Charles's deals are falling apart, overextended on that Arden merger. The other chuckled. He's too busy playing power couple with Grace to notice. Anna froze, her rags still in hand. Memories of Charles's betrayal flashed, his cold words, the frozen accounts, and now the empire he'd chosen over her was crumbling. Her mind, honed by years of balancing budgets, sparked with instinct. If Heiress Enterprises was weak, there were opportunities in the cracks. She finished her shift in silence, the idea taking root like a seed in fertile soil. Back home, the nights grew long. Cold coffee sat in a chipped mug as Anna pored over market charts, the twins nestled against her, their soft breaths a lullaby. She whispered songs, old melodies her mother taught her, while tracing trends with a pencil, teaching herself the dance of stocks and acquisitions. The apartment became her classroom, the twins her anchors. She started small, investing her savings in undervalued shares of companies Charles had abandoned, her instincts sharper than she'd imagined. Losses stung, but each gain fueled her, a quiet rebellion against the man who'd forgotten her. The numbers spoke to her, revealing patterns where others saw chaos, and with every late night, she grew bolder. One rainy afternoon, as she pushed the twins' stroller through a park, a voice broke her reverie. "You've got a keen eye," it said. Anna turned to see an older man, his silver hair peeking from a worn cap, his gaze warm yet assessing. He introduced himself as Edward Wallace, a retired investor with a reputation for spotting talent. He'd noticed her buying patterns, small but precise, and saw potential where others saw a struggling mother. Over weeks, they met in quiet cafes, Edward sharing wisdom over steaming tea. "You've got the grit," he said one day, sliding a check across the table. "Start something. I'll back you." With his funding, Anna named her venture J-Core Holdings, a nod to the core of strength she'd found within. The twins grew, their laughter a soundtrack to her late-night work. Edward's mentorship guided her, but the vision was hers, buying failing subsidiaries Charles had overlooked, turning losses into profit. Her hands trembled as she signed her first deal, a modest acquisition of a logistics firm, but the shake wasn't from fear, it was from purpose. The contract lay before her, a single page that held the weight of her rise. Ethan toddled over, tugging at her skirt, while Ella clapped, sensing her mother's triumph. Anna looked at them, then at the signature, her name, bold and unapologetic, and felt the shift. The woman Charles forgot was no longer invisible. The city outside buzzed, unaware of the quiet revolution in her apartment. The tabloids still flaunted Charles and Grace, but Anna's focus was elsewhere, on charts, on calls with Edward, on the twins who inspired her every move. J-Corps Holdings was small, but it was hers, a foundation built from the ruins of betrayal. She remembered the penthouse, the night he walked away, and smiled faintly. He'd left her with nothing, but she'd taken that nothing and spun it into gold. The deal was signed, the ink dry, and with it a new chapter opened, not just for her, but for Ethan and Ella, who would inherit a legacy of their own. The small apartment buzzed with a new energy, its cramped space transformed into a command center of ambition. J-Corps Holdings had taken root, its first deal a stepping stone for Anna's quiet ascent. She began acquiring failing subsidiaries Charles had abandoned, logistics firms teetering on bankruptcy, manufacturing plants left to rust, snatching them up with the precision of a chess master. Each purchase was a reclamation, a silent reclaiming of the wealth he deemed her unworthy to share. The twins, Ethan and Ella, now 3, played with blocks nearby, their laughter a melody that fueled her late-night strategy sessions. Anna's hands, once trembling with fear, now moved with confidence over contracts, her mind a steel trap for opportunity. Anna grew into a sharp, confident businesswoman, her transformation a marvel even to herself. She traded her cleaning uniform for tailored blazers, her voice steady in negotiations with wary CEOs. Whispers spread through the city's financial circles, the ghost investor who wins every war. No one knew her face, but her moves were legendary, buying low, turning profits, outmaneuvering competitors with a finesse that left them baffled. Edward Wallace, her mentor, marveled at her growth, his funding a lifeline that grew J-Corps into a quiet titan. Anna kept her identity veiled, her name buried in shell companies, but the power she wielded was undeniable. The woman once dismissed as not good enough, now controlled half the city's wealth through silent holdings, her influence a shadow cast over Charles's fading empire. Meanwhile, Charles and Grace faced mounting pressure. Heiress Enterprises' stock dipped with each failed acquisition, the Arden merger a gilded cage that drained resources. Grace, radiant in tabloid photos, insisted Charles prioritize their luxury lifestyle, yacht parties, designer gowns, a mansion that screamed excess. "Focus on us," she'd purr, her hand on his arm at galas, oblivious to the cracks widening beneath them. Charles, once a titan, grew haggard, his smile forced as investors questioned his leadership. The power couple's facade cracked, but they clung to it, blind to the storm brewing in the shadows. Anna, unseen yet ever-present, became the shadow that outsmarted Charles's every move. She studied his patterns, overreaching bids, neglected assets, and struck where he was weakest. A textile mill he'd written off became J-Corps' latest success, its profits doubling under her care. A shipping line he'd let lapse was hers within months, its routes now fueling her growth. Each victory was quiet, deliberate, a revenge served cold. She worked from her apartment, the twins' crayons scattered amid her charts, their innocence a contrast to the empire she built. The subtext was clear, the woman he'd cast aside was no longer a footnote but a force, her silent holdings a web that ensnared his legacy. One evening, as the twins napped, Anna flipped through a magazine left on the kitchen table. The cover blazed with a photo, Charles and Grace at a gala, her in a glittering gown, him in a tuxedo that hung loosely on his thinning frame. The headline crowed, "Heiress Arden Empire Shines," but Anna saw the strain in their eyes. She traced the image with a finger, a faint smile curving her lips. "Soon," she whispered, the word a promise and a prayer. The magazine fell to the table, its gloss a stark contrast to the humble room, but Anna's gaze was fixed on the future. The twins stirred, their soft coos pulling her back, and she knew this was only the beginning. The city lights flickered outside, a witness to her rise. J-Corps' profits grew, its reach expanding, yet Anna remained the ghost investor, her identity a mystery to the boardrooms she dominated. Charles's empire, once unassailable, wobbled under the weight of his choices, while Grace's demands only deepened the rift. Anna felt no malice, only a steady resolve. The woman he forgot was rewriting the story, her twins the heartbeat of her mission. Each acquisition was a brick in the wall she'd build, a wall that would one day stand taller than the penthouse he'd taken from her. In the quiet, Anna stood by the window, the magazine still open on the table. The twins toddled over, Ethan pointing at the lights, Ella clapping her hands. Anna lifted them into her arms, their warmth a reminder of why she fought. The faint smile lingered as she murmured, "Soon, my loves. Soon." The word carried the weight of her transformation, a vow that her rise would not be silent forever. The apartment, once a symbol of her fall, now pulsed with the promise of her triumph. The city skyline glittered through Anna's apartment window, a testament to the empire she'd quietly built. J-Core Holdings had grown into a force, its acquisitions a web of success that stretched across industries Charles had once dominated. The twins, Ethan and Ella, now 5, chased each other across the living room, their laughter a bright thread in the fabric of her days. Anna sat at her desk, reviewing the latest profit margins, her confidence a quiet armor honed by years of struggle. But the turning point she'd awaited was nearing, and fate was about to deliver it in an unexpected form. Across town, Heiress Charles paced the opulent boardroom of Heiress Enterprises, his brow furrowed as he planned a massive merger gala with Arden Industries. The event was to be a spectacle, a chance to solidify his faltering empire with Grace's family wealth. Papers littered the table, contracts scribbled with last-minute adjustments, but his mind wrestled with the company's decline. The merger was his lifeline, and the gala would showcase their resilience, or so he hoped. Grace swept into the room, her gown a cascade of emerald silk, her presence commanding. "We must flaunt our wealth," she insisted, her voice a melody of entitlement. "Invite every top investor, especially our new majority partner, J-Core Holdings. Let them see our strength." Charles paused, the name unfamiliar on his tongue. J-Core, he frowned, scanning the shareholder list. Never heard of them. The mystery investor had quietly amassed 52% of his company, their moves a shadow he couldn't trace. Grace shrugged, a thin smile playing on her lips. "You will. They own 52%. Invite them, and let's see who dares to challenge us." Her confidence masked her ignorance, but Charles's unease grew. He nodded, ordering the invitation sent, unaware that the stage he set would soon belong to another. Days later, the invitation arrived in Anna's mailbox, its gold-embossed lettering a stark contrast to the modest envelope. She held it, the weight of it sinking in, and a quiet laugh escaped her. Fate had handed her the stage she dreamed of, a chance to step from the shadows into the light. The card detailed the gala, a merger celebration at Heiress Tower, attended by the city's elite. Her fingers traced the name J-Core Holdings, her creation, now a majority stakeholder in Charles's empire. The irony was delicious. His own company, the one he'd built on her dismissal, was hers to command. She tucked the invitation into her desk, her mind racing with plans, her heart steady with purpose. The twins bounded over, their dark hair tousled from play, their eyes bright with curiosity. Ethan, with his father's determined jaw, held a toy car, while Ella, her mother's softness in her smile, clutched a doll. Anna knelt to their level, the invitation in hand, and studied them. 5 years had shaped them, 5 years of her love, her sacrifice, her silent rise. They knew little of Charles, only the stories she'd woven of a man who'd left, a man they didn't need. But now the time had come to face him, not with anger, but with the truth of what she'd built. "How do you two feel about meeting your father?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Ethan tilted his head, his brow furrowing in thought. "Is he nice, Mommy?" he asked, his innocence a shield against the past. Ella clung to Anna's arm, her voice soft. "Will he like us?" Anna's heart tightened, but she smiled, brushing their hair back. "He'll see you," she said, "and he'll see what we've made without him." The words were a vow, a bridge to the confrontation she'd prepared for. The twins nodded, trusting her, and Anna felt the weight of the moment, the turning point where her past and future would collide. Outside, the city hummed, its lights a backdrop to her resolve. The gala loomed, a stage where Charles and Grace would preen, unaware of the player they'd overlooked. Anna rose, tucking the invitation into her pocket, and turned to the twins. J-Core's success had given her leverage, but it was her children who gave her reason. She pictured the tower, its glass walls reflecting her triumph, and knew this was more than revenge, it was redemption. The woman who'd been forgotten was about to remind the world of her name. In the quiet of the apartment, Anna began to plan. She'd attend as J-Core's representative, her identity a revelation that would shift the power. The twins would be with her, not as pawns, but as proof of her strength. She imagined Charles's face, Grace's shock, and felt no bitterness, only a steady certainty. The invitation was her key, and she would unlock the door to her destiny. Ethan and Ella played on, their laughter a rhythm of hope, while Anna's mind mapped the gala, each detail a step toward the moment she'd reclaim what was hers. The evening deepened, the city lights growing brighter, and Anna stood by the window, the invitation in hand. The twins joined her, peering out, their small hands in hers. "Soon," she whispered, echoing the promise she'd made years ago. This was the turning point, not just for her, but for Ethan and Ella, who would stand with her as she faced the man who'd left them behind. The stage was set, and Anna, the woman they forgot, was ready to step into the spotlight. The night draped Heiress Tower in a veil of opulence, its glass walls reflecting a sea of wealth and vanity. Chandeliers cast golden light over marble floors, where the city's elite mingled, their laughter a symphony of privilege. The merger gala between Heiress Enterprises and Arden Industries was in full swing, a celebration orchestrated to mask the company's fragility. Waiters glided with trays of champagne, their polished shoes silent against the grandeur, while the air hummed with the clink of glasses and the rustle of designer gowns. Heiress Charles stood at the center, his tuxedo crisp despite the strain etched into his features. The speech he'd prepared, a paean to legacy, rested on the podium, a lifeline to reclaim his fading reputation. He cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying his voice across the room. "Tonight, we celebrate a legacy," he began, his tone steady but hollow. "Heiress Enterprises and Arden Industries unite to build a future that honors our past, a future of strength, innovation, and enduring power." The crowd applauded, though the enthusiasm felt forced, a polite veneer over the whispers of his recent losses. Grace Arden stood beside him, her emerald gown shimmering, her smile a mask of triumph. She raised her glass, her eyes scanning the room, oblivious to the tension that simmered beneath the surface. The guests, investors, moguls, socialites, clustered around, their attention split between Charles's words and the opulent display. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and a hush fell over the gathering. Whispers rippled like waves, starting at the back and surging forward. Anna stepped into the light, poised and radiant, her gray silk dress a study in understated power. At 5 years old, Ethan and Ella flanked her, their small hands clasped in hers. Ethan, with his father's determined jaw, wore a navy suit that mirrored Charles's, while Ella, her mother's softness in her smile, glowed in a matching dress. The twins' bright eyes took in the room, unafraid, their presence a quiet declaration. Anna's head was high, her stride deliberate, the invitation tucked into her clutch a symbol of her assent. The crowd parted, cameras flashing like stars, capturing the moment the ghost investor materialized. Grace's smile faltered, her glass trembling in her hand. Charles froze mid-sentence, his words about legacy dying on his lips as recognition dawned. The room held its breath, the clink of glasses fading into a stunned silence. Anna approached the stage, her gaze locking with Charles's, a chill settling over the warmth of the gala. She stopped before him, releasing the twins' hands to stand alone, her voice cutting through the quiet with chilling grace. "Good evening, Mr. Heiress. I believe you know my company." The words hung in the air, a blade of truth slicing through his facade. Cameras flashed again, the paparazzi sensing a scandal, their lenses trained on the trio at the heart of the drama. Grace's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed like a gunshot. Red wine pooled around her feet, a stark contrast to her pale face. She stepped back, her composure cracking, her eyes darting between Anna and Charles. The investors murmured, their whispers growing into a hum of speculation. Charles's mouth opened, then closed, his hands gripping the podium as if it could anchor him. The legacy he'd boasted of now teetered, threatened by the woman he'd cast aside. Anna remained still, her expression unreadable, the twins standing close, their innocence a stark counterpoint to the tension. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken history. Charles's eyes searched hers, a mix of disbelief and recognition flickering within them. He leaned toward the microphone, his voice a hoarse whisper that carried to the edges of the room. "Anna, how?" The question hung, a plea wrapped in shock, the weight of 5 years crashing down on him. The crowd leaned in, eager for the answer, their cameras clicking relentlessly. Grace clutched his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, but he didn't notice. His focus was on Anna, the woman who'd haunted his company's ledgers. Anna stepped closer, her voice low but clear, meant for him yet audible to all. While you built an empire on lies, I built one on truth. The words landed like a thunderclap, each syllable a testament to her journey, from the penthouse's betrayal to the boardroom's triumph. The room erupted, whispers turning to gasps, the flash of cameras a storm around them. Ethan tilted his head, his voice cutting through the chaos with childlike clarity. "Mommy, is this the man who didn't want us?" The question silenced the crowd anew, its innocence a mirror to Charles's past. Ella clung to Anna's leg, her eyes wide, while Grace's face flushed crimson, her retreat halted by the weight of the moment. Charles stammered, his composure shattering. "Anna, I didn't know," he began, but she raised a hand, silencing him. Her gaze was steady, her strength a beacon amid the chaos. "You didn't need to know," she said, her tone firm yet devoid of malice. "I built this for them." She gestured to the twins, their small forms a symbol of her resilience. The investors exchanged glances, their minds racing to recalibrate the power dynamics. J-Core Holdings, the majority stakeholder, was no longer a mystery. It was Anna Jones, the woman Charles had forsaken. Grace recovered enough to storm toward the exit, her heels clicking a frantic retreat, the shattered glass crunching underfoot. The crowd parted for her, their attention returning to Anna as she turned to the twins. "Come, my loves," she said softly, kneeling to their level. Ethan nodded, his small hand slipping back into hers, while Ella smiled, trusting her mother's lead. The cameras followed, capturing the image of a family reborn, a contrast to the empire crumbling behind them. Charles remained at the podium, his legacy in tatters, his whisper lost in the rising tide of voices. Anna led the twins toward the elevator, her head held high, the weight of the room's gaze a crown she wore with grace. The gala, meant to exalt Charles and Grace, had become her stage, her reveal a quiet revolution. The glass walls of Heiress Tower reflected her image, poised, radiant, unstoppable, while the city beyond shimmered with the promise of her future. She felt no triumph in his downfall, only the steady pulse of her purpose. The twins' hands in hers were her anchor, their presence a testament to the truth she'd built. As the elevator doors closed, sealing the night's drama within, Anna smiled faintly at her children. "We did it," she whispered, her voice a blend of pride and peace. The descent was smooth, the noise of the gala fading, but the impact of her words lingered. Charles's empire, built on lies, would never recover the ground she'd claimed with truth. The woman they forgot had returned, not to destroy, but to redefine. The aftermath of the gala lingered like a storm's echo, the air in Heiress Tower thick with tension. The revelation of Anna's identity as the force behind J-Core Holdings had shifted the room's energy, a seismic ripple beneath the marble floors. The elite gathered in clusters, their whispers a low hum as they processed the night's turn. Heiress Charles stood near the podium, his tuxedo disheveled, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Grace Arden, her emerald gown now a symbol of her faltering reign, hovered beside him, her possessive grip on his arm tightening as if to anchor her crumbling world. Anna remained at the center, poised and radiant, Ethan and Ella at her sides, their small hands in hers. The moment mirrored the uploaded image, a tableau of power and defeat, frozen in the flash of cameras that continued to snap relentlessly. The twins, unaware of the gravity, broke the silence with their innocence. Ethan, his dark eyes wide with curiosity, tugged at Anna's hand and spoke in a clear, piping voice. "Mommy, is this the man who didn't want us?" The question sliced through the room, a child's truth laid bare before the sophisticated crowd. Ella nodded, her soft voice echoing her brother's. "He looks sad," she added, tilting her head as if puzzled by Charles's expression. The words hung in the air, a stark revelation of the past Anna had shielded them from. The investors and guests murmured, their whispers swelling into a chorus of astonishment and judgment. Eyes darted between Anna, the twins and Charles, piecing together the story of abandonment that now stained his legacy. Grace's face flushed a deep crimson, her composure shattering like the glass she dropped the night before. She released Charles's arm, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "This is absurd," she hissed, her voice trembling with humiliation. Without another word, she stormed toward the exit, her heels a staccato beat against the floor, the crowd parting to let her pass. The doors swung shut behind her, a final note to her retreat, leaving Charles isolated under the weight of the moment. The investors exchanged glances, their murmurs growing louder, some scribbling notes, others whispering to their aides. The power shift was palpable, the room tilting toward the woman who'd once been dismissed. Anna stepped forward, her presence commanding the space. She addressed the gathering with a calm authority, her voice steady as she explained J-Corps' takeover. Heiress Enterprises now answers to my board, she said, her words deliberate, each one a brick in the foundation of her triumph. J-Corps Holdings has acquired a majority stake, and under my leadership, we will steer this company toward stability and integrity. The investors nodded, some with approval, others with calculation, recognizing the shift in control. She outlined the financial maneuvers, silent acquisitions, strategic buyouts, that had brought her to this point, her expertise a stark contrast to Charles's faltering reign. The crowd listened, captivated, as the ghost investor revealed herself as the architect of his downfall. The scene unfolded as a living mirror to the uploaded image. Anna stood calm, her gray silk dress a symbol of her unyielding resolve, her twins at her sides like sentinels of her strength. Charles, stunned, gripped the podium, his eyes locked on her, the shock etching lines into his face. Grace's absence left a void, but her defeat lingered in the memory of her flight. The cameras captured it all, the poised mother, the shattered tycoon, the children who bridged their past. The flashbulbs painted the moment in stark relief, a public reckoning that would dominate headlines by morning. Anna's gaze never wavered, her composure a quiet power that silenced the room. She knelt to the twins, her voice softening as she instructed them. "Always be polite to those who underestimate you," she said, her tone a gentle lesson wrapped in wisdom. Ethan nodded solemnly, his small hand squeezing hers, while Ella smiled, her trust in her mother unshakable. The words were for them, but they resonated with the crowd, a subtle rebuke to Charles and a declaration of her values. The investors murmured again, some with respect, others with awe, as they witnessed the grace with which she wielded her victory. Charles's silence grew heavier, his realization dawning that this was no accident of fate. He stepped forward, his voice a broken whisper. "Anna, how could you do this?" The question was less an accusation than a plea, his empire slipping through his fingers as he faced the woman he'd underestimated. The room held its breath, waiting for her response. Anna rose, meeting his gaze with a steadiness that belied the years of pain. "I didn't do this to you, Charles," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I did this for them, for Ethan and Ella. You built your empire on lies, but I built mine on truth." The words struck him like a physical blow, his shoulders slumping as the truth of her journey sank in. The crowd erupted into a buzz of conversation, the power shift now undeniable. Investors approached Anna, their hands extended in congratulations, their interest shifting to the new leader of Heiress Enterprises. The twins clung to her, their presence a shield and a strength, while Charles retreated to the edge of the room, his legacy in ruins. The cameras followed, capturing the moment of his downfall and her ascent. Anna felt no malice, only a quiet satisfaction in the justice of the moment. The woman who'd been forgotten had become the one they couldn't ignore. As the night wore on, Anna guided the twins toward a quieter corner, their small voices a comfort amid the chaos. She glanced back at Charles, his figure diminished against the grandeur he'd once commanded, and felt a pang of something, pity perhaps but not regret. The reckoning was public, the power hers, and the twins' hands in hers were the proof of her triumph. The city beyond the glass walls shimmered, a witness to the shift, and Anna knew this was only the beginning of the legacy she'd build. The murmur of the crowd faded as she knelt again, wiping a smudge from Ella's cheek. "You did wonderfully," she whispered, her voice a balm to their innocence. Ethan grinned, his confidence mirroring hers, while Ella nestled closer. The image of their family, forged in resilience, stood in stark contrast to the man who'd turned away. Charles watched from afar, his realization crystallizing. His downfall was not fate, but her. The woman he'd left behind had become the architect of his undoing, her truth a foundation stronger than his lies. The boardroom of Heiress Tower buzzed with a charged silence, the air thick with the weight of history and the promise of change. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden rays across the polished table where the merger papers lay. Anna Jones sat at the head, her gray silk dress a quiet echo of the gala's triumph, her hand steady as she reviewed the final documents. Ethan and Ella, now 5, sat nearby, their small figures dwarfed by the grandeur, coloring quietly with crayons she brought to keep them grounded. The room held the city's top investors, their eyes on Anna, the woman who had turned a whisper into a roar. Today was the emotional and corporate climax she'd worked toward, the formal signing that would make her CEO and seal the transfer of power. Anna picked up the pen, its weight a symbol of her journey. The ink flowed as she signed her name, Anna Jones, CEO of J-Core Holdings, each letter a testament to the years of struggle, the late nights, the tears shed in this very tower. The investors nodded, some with approval, others with the calculated respect of those who'd misjudged her. The papers passed to the board, their signatures a chorus of agreement, and with each stroke, Heiress Enterprises slipped from Charles's grasp into her hands. The room exhaled, the shift palpable, a corporate rebirth orchestrated by the woman he'd once discarded. She set the pen down, her heart pounding not with nerves but with the quiet pride of fulfillment. Charles stood across the table, his tuxedo replaced by a rumpled suit, his face etched with the exhaustion of defeat. He stepped forward, his voice breaking the silence with a plea. "Anna, I made a mistake," he said, his eyes pleading, the arrogance of old replaced by desperation. "Give me a second chance. We can fix this, together." The investors turned, their gazes shifting between the two, the drama unfolding like a play's final act. Grace's absence was a void, her shares sold in the wake of the gala scandal, her departure to Europe a whisper on the wind, followed by tabloid tales of her humiliation. Charles's plea hung in the air, a fragile thread of hope in the face of his crumbling empire. Anna met his gaze, her expression calm but unyielding. She rose, the chair scraping softly against the floor, and stepped closer, her voice a steady current of truth. "You didn't just lose me, Charles. You lost the future you could have had." The words carried the weight of 5 years, the penthouse's betrayal, the twins' birth, the empire she'd built from nothing. Her eyes held no anger, only the clarity of a woman who'd outgrown him. Charles's shoulders slumped, his hands trembling as he realized the depth of his loss, not just the company, but the family, the life he'd cast aside. The investors murmured, their respect for Anna deepening, while the twins looked up, sensing the moment's gravity. The boardroom doors opened, and a team of movers entered, their efficiency a stark contrast to the emotional scene. They began removing Charles's portrait from the wall, its gilded frame a relic of his reign, replacing it with J-Core's emblem, a silver phoenix rising from flames. Anna watched, her heart steady, as the tower was renamed J-Core HQ, the corporate heart now beating to her rhythm. The investors applauded, a formal acknowledgement of her leadership, and Anna turned to the twins, offering them a reassuring smile. Ethan grinned, his small hand clutching hers, while Ella clapped, her innocence alight in the room's transformation. Later, Anna stood alone by the same window where she'd once cried, the skyline reflecting in her eyes. The glass was cool against her fingertips, a memory of that night 5 years ago when Charles's betrayal had shattered her world. Back then, the city lights had blurred through her tears, a distant dream she feared she'd never reach. Now, they shone with a new meaning, hers. The tower, once his domain, was now her stronghold, its glass walls a mirror to her triumph. She traced the skyline's outline, the phoenix emblem glinting behind her, and felt the weight of her journey lift into pride. The room behind her buzzed with the new board's plans, their voices a symphony of progress. Charles had left, his plea unanswered, his future uncertain, while Grace's exile faded into irrelevance. Anna's mind drifted to the twins, their laughter echoing from the hall where they played with the secretary's offered toys. They were her legacy, her reason, the heartbeat of the empire she'd claimed. She thought of the small apartment, the late nights, Edward Wallace's faith, each step a brick in this moment. The woman who'd been left with nothing had taken everything, not with vengeance, but with the truth of her resilience. A soft knock interrupted her reverie. An assistant approached, holding a tablet with the day's headlines. Anna Jones takes Heiress Tower, becomes CEO. The article detailed the merger, her rise, the twins' role in the public eye. She skimmed it, a faint smile curving her lips, and set the tablet aside. The city beyond the window pulsed with life, its lights a testament to her victory. She thought of Charles's words, "I made a mistake," and felt no bitterness. He'd lost more than a company, he'd lost the chance to know the family she'd nurtured, the future she'd shaped. The twins' footsteps pattered closer, and Anna turned as they ran to her, their arms wrapping around her legs. "Mommy, is this our home now?" Ethan asked, his voice bright with wonder. Ella nodded, her eyes wide. Anna knelt, pulling them close, their warmth a contrast to the cool glass. "Yes, my loves," she whispered. "This is ours." The skyline reflected in their eyes too, a shared inheritance, and Anna felt the fullness of her triumph. The tower, renamed and reclaimed, was more than a building, it was the monument to her strength, her love, her truth. Outside, the city moved on, its rhythm unchanged, but within J-Core HQ, a new era dawned. Anna rose, the twins' hands in hers, and looked out once more. The window, once a witness to her tears, now framed her reflection, a woman ablaze with purpose, her legacy secure. The past was a shadow, the future a canvas, and she, with her twins, would paint it with the colors of resilience and hope. Months had passed since the transfer of power, and J-Corps HQ stood as a beacon of renewal atop the city skyline. The boardroom, once a stage for Charles's dominance, had transformed into Anna's sanctuary, its walls adorned with charts of growth and the soft laughter of her children. The morning sun filtered through the same window where she'd once wept, now casting a warm glow over Ethan and Ella as they played with building blocks on the plush carpet. At 6 years old, they were bright sparks of her resilience, their voices a melody of joy amid the corporate hum. Anna sat at her desk, reviewing the latest quarterly report, her title as CEO a quiet crown earned through truth and tenacity. The company thrived under her leadership, its phoenix emblem a symbol of the rebirth she'd orchestrated, and the scars of the past had begun to heal into strength. A soft knock interrupted the morning's peace. The assistant ushered in a figure Anna hadn't expected, Heiress Charles. His suit was simple, his posture humbled, the arrogance of old replaced by a weary sincerity. He carried no briefcase, no demand, only a look of regret as he stepped forward. "Anna," he began, his voice low, "I've come to apologize. Not to beg, not to take anything back, just to say I'm sorry. For everything." The words hung in the air, a bridge across the chasm of their history. The investors were gone, the boardroom empty save for the twins, who paused their play to watch with curious eyes. Anna studied him, the man who'd once shattered her world, now a shadow of his former self. She rose, her movements graceful, and gestured to a chair. "Sit," she said, her tone neutral but not unkind. Charles obeyed, his hands clasped tightly, and she stood before him, the window's light framing her like a halo. She didn't need his apology to validate her journey, but for herself, for the woman who'd carried the weight of his betrayal, she chose to accept it. "I forgive you," she said finally, her voice steady. "Not for you, Charles, but for me. To let go of the pain you left behind." His eyes glistened, a nod of gratitude his only response, and the room seemed to breathe easier. The twins resumed their play, unaware of the emotional tide, their innocence a balm to the moment. Anna turned to Ethan and Ella, kneeling to their level, their blocks scattered like the foundation of her new life. "Power means nothing if it costs your peace," she told them, her words a lesson etched from her own trials. Ethan tilted his head, his small brow furrowing. "But you're the boss, Mommy," he said, his voice a mix of pride and confusion. Ella nodded, clutching a block shaped like a star. "Yeah, you make everything better." Anna smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest, and pulled them close. "No, sweetheart. We are," she whispered, her voice a promise that their strength was collective, their legacy shared. The office door opened again, and the assistant entered with a crate. From it emerged a silver phoenix statue, its wings spread in triumph, replacing the gilded portrait of Charles that had once dominated the wall. The movers positioned it with care, the metal glinting in the sunlight, a final symbol of rebirth complete. Anna watched, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. The tower, renamed and reclaimed, was no longer a monument to his lies but a testament to her truth. The twins clapped, delighted by the shiny new figure, and Anna felt the full circle of her journey, from the penthouse's betrayal to this office of healing. Charles rose, his visit drawing to a close. "Thank you, Anna," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of his humility. "For letting me see this." He glanced at the twins, a flicker of longing in his eyes, but he turned to leave, his apology a bridge he wouldn't cross again. Anna nodded, watching him go, the door closing with a gentle click. She felt no bitterness, only the release of a burden she'd carried too long. The past was a shadow, and she stepped into the light of her own making. Later, as the afternoon waned, Anna stood by the window, the skyline reflecting in her eyes. The same glass that had witnessed her tears now mirrored her triumph, the city a canvas of her victory. She thought of the small apartment, the late nights, the whispers of the ghost investor, each memory a thread in the tapestry of her rise. The phoenix statue gleamed behind her, its wings a silent salute to the woman she'd become. Ethan and Ella joined her, their small hands pressing against the glass, their reflections blending with hers. "Look, Mommy, it's so pretty," Ella exclaimed, her voice bright. Ethan grinned, echoing her joy. "We're up so high." Anna knelt, wrapping her arms around them, their warmth a contrast to the cool pain. They said I was nothing without him, she whispered, her voice a soft confession to the city beyond. But look at us now. The words were a declaration, a healing balm for the wounds of the past. Ethan turned to her, his grin widening. Mom, are you the boss? He asked, his innocence a mirror to her strength. Anna smiled, her eyes glistening with pride. No, sweetheart. We are, she said, her voice steady with love and certainty. The twins giggled, their laughter filling the room, a sound that sealed the resolution of her journey. The office settled into a peaceful hum, the staff's voices a distant rhythm of progress. Anna rose, the twins' hands in hers, and gazed out once more. The skyline stretched before her, a testament to the empire she'd built, not with vengeance, but with the truth of her resilience and the love of her children. The silver phoenix stood where Charles's portrait once hung, its presence a silent vow that rebirth was complete. She thought of Grace, gone to obscurity, and Charles, humbled by his own choices, and felt only peace. The power she'd claimed was not her end, but her beginning, a legacy for Ethan and Ella, a world where they would always be enough. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, and Anna whispered to herself, "We are the phoenix." The words were a prayer, a promise, a celebration of the family she'd forged. The tower, now J-Core HQ, pulsed with life, its glass walls reflecting not just the city, but the strength of a mother and her twins. The past was a shadow cast aside, and the future, a horizon of hope, belonged to them.
Thank you for watching this story to the end, my beautiful family and friends. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.